threaded jewelry versus non-threaded jewelry, or threadless, or snap jewelry, sometimes it's called. Coming up next on Pros and Cons by Piercer, Season 2, Episode number 25, so you might want to stick around. For those who are new to the channel, first off, welcome to the channel. Hope you're enjoying the videos, hoping you're finding them educational, edifying, and everything else that you ever expected them to be, and then some. But you might not know who I am, even though I tend to say it on every video. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and I operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located here inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So, when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking about a level of expertise that comes from being in the body piercing industry for well over 27 years. Yep. What we're going to talk about today, I'm going to do 10 rounds, 10 different subject matters relating to jewelry. But before we get into this, let's talk a little bit about the history and what the difference is between the two types. Threaded jewelry has been around probably since the early to mid 80s. Maybe I'm guessing basically because Gauntlet was probably pretty much the only real major manufacturer at the time that it was developed there. And the way they work is that the ball either has a piece of threading off of it or is threaded and then threads onto the post. Of course, internally threaded, meaning that the threading comes off the ball and threads into the post, is always preferable to the other type, externally threaded. The other type, threadless, has been around since about 1997 or so, was developed by Neometal. It is a... Basically, the way it works, there's sometimes called snap, threadless. There's a couple other names people use for it, and it may be mainly to try to get around the patent that was either pending or filed. I'm not sure what the status is. Anyway, that Neometal did. The way they work is there's a piece of threading or a piece of wire, basically, that comes out of the end. The way they work is the post is hollow. The end, either a ball or a gem or what have you, has a piece of wire that comes off of it. The wire is bent slightly to put pressure on the side of that hollow post to hold it in place. It kind of just pushes in and pulls out the same way. Now, you can adjust the tension from really tight to not so tight, depending on the material it's made out of and how secure you really want it to be. For those that have seen some of these videos in the past, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into 10 topics or 10 rounds, including the look, the security, swelling, movement, ease of use, jewelry variety, cost, contact, and migration and rejection. I do this with every type of jewelry just basically because it's kind of an even playing field, I guess. Before we get into the first one, if you like this video, find it helpful, find it entertaining, please give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you liked it. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Now, we're going to start out with the look. This one, it's kind of hard to say between the two of them because threadless and threaded jewelry looks very similar, whether or not it's a LeBray post or LeBray stud or LeBert stud. Or it's a curved barbell or circular barbell. They all kind of look the same. There's not really that much of a difference between the two of them. They look the same in the piercing, and oftentimes it's very difficult to tell the difference. The only thing I can really say is that sometimes with the threadless, you can get much smaller ends, so they have a little bit less of a profile. But other than that, I think this one's pretty much a tie. So far after one round, it is threadless 1, threaded 1. That moves us on to security. Now, security, when you're talking about that, because you're threading balls onto jewelry and you can dictate how tight you get it on there versus this bending, which is not a consistent way to get that to secure on there. This one has to go to threaded, mainly because it's just my experience that in most cases, the threaded jewelry, yes, it will come off. It can unscrew, but it's probably not quite as easy to remove by accident than the threadless is. So security after 2 rounds, well, after this one goes to threaded. With this round going to threaded, after 2 rounds, it is threadless 1, threaded 2, which moves us on to round number 3. Profile and how noticeable it is. Once again, we're kind of in that same kind of situation we have with look. They tend to be about the same. Threadless may have just a slight advantage, but it's really not enough to give them a clear victory on this one. So this one is going to be a tie, bringing up the score to threadless 2, threaded 3. Swelling. On this one, we're kind of in the same situation. It's kind of an even match. The only thing I will say is with threaded or threadless jewelry, it's much less complicated to remove. So if you have a situation where you do see swelling and you have to replace the jewelry, usually the threadless is going to be less traumatic and cause less trauma. But beyond that, it's pretty much exactly the same. You either have a long enough piece of jewelry to allow for the swelling or you don't. So this one's a tie. So after 4 rounds, it's going to be threadless 3, threaded 4. And round number 5, movement. Well, once again, because the jewelry is generally similar or in shape and style, it's about dead even on this one. There's really not much difference between the two at all, to be honest with you. Because usually this is used with post-style jewelry. There's very little movement. If it's done with a curved barbell or circular barbell, it's going to be the same whether or not it's threaded or it's threadless. So it's once again a tie. So after 5 rounds, threadless 4, threaded 5. Before we move on to round number 6, let's talk a little bit about our merch store, or at least I will. We have plenty of designs, plenty of different types of designs, various different colors, and things to choose from, including different products. Check out the merch bar below if you're on YouTube, or click on that link in the description to go directly to our merch page. Number 6, ease of use. Now, this one. Threaded jewelry can be very difficult to get unscrewed. It can be very difficult to start. It can be kind of a pain in the ass depending on the manufacturer. Some manufacturers of threaded jewelry have a little bit of a lead, so you just kind of set it in there and then start twisting. While others, you pretty much have to hold it in the perfect spot and start spinning the end to get it to go in. There's no leeway. And if you do it wrong, you're going to mislead or misthread and end up stripping the jewelry if you push it too hard, or get it stuck on there and you can't get it off. With threadless, you're pretty much just bending, pushing, and pulling. So it's a lot easier for your average person to use. Of course, getting it into certain areas can be a little complicated and may require tools, but for the most part, if you're breaking down the difference between the two, it's much easier to find that tiny little threading and put it into the post than it's going to be to try to thread something on there. So this one definitely goes to threadless. It is much easier to use. So after 6 rounds, the score is now 5-all, tying it up again and evening out the playing field. Now let's move on to round number 7, jewelry variety. This one, I have to say, and it's because the threadless has kind of exploded over the last, I would say, decade or so, primarily because people are piercing areas of the body where it's a little bit more difficult to get in there and thread jewelry on. The threadless has a ton more selection when it comes to ends than usually threaded jewelry does. In part, I think it's because the industry has just moved in that direction, but usually when you go to a manufacturer's page, you're going to find maybe 2 pages of threaded jewelry and ends, and then you go to the threadless, and it's 5-6 times that. So on this one, threadless wins. After 7 rounds, threadless 6, threaded 5, which moves us on to round number 8. And this one's cost. This one, no one's ever been able to explain to me why it is, but it seems like threaded jewelry is always going to be cheaper. I don't know if it has something to do with the manufacturing or what's going on. You would think because they don't have to thread it and there are not as many additional steps that it would be cheaper because there's less labor involved. But usually, to be honest with you, just a basic labret with like just a silver tone to it and a standard ball on it is going to be, if you buy threaded, is usually going to be less than half the cost that a threadless is going to be. So that jewelry is definitely, threadless is definitely more expensive, and it makes it a little bit more cost determined. So if you're on a budget, threaded jewelry is always going to be cheaper, but you're going to give up other things like variety and etc. So after 8 rounds, it's tied up again. Threadless 6, threaded 6. Which moves us on to round number 9, contact. This one, basically the same thing. The only thing I will say is that because they're more secure, the threaded jewelry is not going to pop out as easily sometimes than the threadless will. But for the most part, because you're just dealing with the same jewelry style, there's really not going to be that much of a difference between the two of them. So after 9 rounds, it's still tied up. Threadless 6, threaded 6. Now for the final round, round number 10, migration and rejection. Both of these are going to be exactly the same. It's pretty much a tie. It really depends more on the jewelry type, placement, etc. So either of these will work fine in most healing piercings, and they will work about the same. Like I said, there's all these other complicated things, but for the most part, they're both good. So after 10 rounds, we are tied 6-6. And I think my calculations are right, but I think it changed them and didn't do them quite the same. So anyway, so what now? We go into extended rounds, and we're going to talk a little bit about why I think threading is a better option in a majority of cases. On non-oral or sexual piercings, it is a great option. It's easier to take care of. It's easier to remove. It's easier to change. The only time I would really be concerned is when you have piercings that go into the mouth. I'm always leery that the jewelry is going to, that end's just going to pop off and then somebody's going to swallow something. The same thing with certain genital piercings, especially the male genital piercings that are on the glands or the shaft of the penis. Secondly, if you change jewelry very often, I would suggest threadless because it's just going to be easier. It's going to require less effort. It's going to require less tools and less frustration. It's just easier to slide the one end off and put another one in. And if you're one of those people who likes to change jewelry a lot, you're going to like a large variety of different ends. And most threadless jewelry is sold separately. You can get the pieces and the parts separate from the post. So you can often leave the same post in and change the front or the end quite often. So you can get a variety of different things, and it ranges in price or type from very simple all the way up to very, very elegant and very, very complicated pieces of jewelry. So, in extended rounds, I'm going to give it to threadless. And this final score is threadless 7, threaded 6. Anyway, if you have an opinion on this or you've had experience with either of these types of jewelry and you'd like to share it, please leave a comment. Also, if you have any questions, I try to answer them when I have time. Till next time, here's hoping all the piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you are in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care. Take care of one another. Enjoy this summer. And we'll see you in the next video. Maybe this one or that one.